Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Super excited today to have Dale Wills on the show, founder and CEO of Centra Companies. Dale, thanks for being on today.
Yep, it's good to be with you.
Oh, this is awesome. Well, good. Well, I usually like to start out with people's origin stories. So if you would, just share a little bit about who you are and kind of what brought you to what you're doing now at Centra Companies.
Yeah, I've been in the business of real estate in some fashion most of my life. I took a little hiatus and got into retail for a period of time, and that was a good learning experience. But grew up in California. My wife and I both did, and we got married, and we ended up going to Las Vegas, and we spent a couple of years doing banking. So we did mortgage banking, some development and construction banking, and then from there we ended up in Utah, and there again did some banking, and then went to work for a large developer and home builder for a period of time, and then that's when I did a little hiatus, and I got into the Radio Shack business for
Oh,
a while.
wow.
Yeah, it's like they don't even exist anymore, and that was a good experience because I learned a lot from it. And it was fun because one of our stores was the largest franchise in the world, so we produced a
Really?
lot.
Wow.
Um, and so that was exciting, and I'm glad that's in the past. I learned a lot from it, but I don't want to run a retail store again.
Yeah.
And then did home building on my own for a while. Worked for a company that they created a city from scratch, and so they created their own sewer company and
Oh, my
water
word.
company, and developed a golf course, and designed the commercial center, and that was pretty cool. That was in the late '90s, early 2000s. That city today has, not sure, if I had to guess, 40, 50,000 people live there now.
That's incredible.
So that was a lot of fun. Yeah. And then worked for a large national home builder, and they asked me to move to Minnesota for a period of time. And I said, yeah, let me think about it. I went to my office, and I had to look up where Minnesota was exactly. And I'm like, well, I used to watch professional football, and I know it got pretty cold there, but outside of that, I don't know much about Minnesota. And
Yeah.
so I went back and said, yeah, I'll do it 3 years max though. And that was 18 years ago,
Oh, wow.
still in Minnesota. And then in 2010, the market fell apart in '08, as many of us experienced. And
Sure.
said, I'm going to go out on my own and start my own thing again. I've been self-employed more than employed, and started Centra Homes, which we worked with a lot of banks working through their distressed assets,
Okay.
whether it's partially built homes, whether it's partially built commercial, land that was partially done. So we helped work through a lot of those assets. And then from there, that ran its course, and banks didn't have distressed assets after a period of time. And
Sure.
then we started developing land, building homes, got in a little bit into apartments, a little bit into commercial. And then most recently, we just launched Centra Capital Partners,
Okay.
which is a real estate equity, and it's allowing people to co-invest with us in the projects that we're doing. And that
Okay.
and that brings us here. We're still in Minnesota. We love it here. The people are great.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're probably here for the long haul.
Oh, that's great. That's fabulous. So what's for the fun? Like, what are you guys focused on?
From a business standpoint,
Yeah.
so we have the home building entity that, we'll do probably 50, 60 million in revenue this year on the home building.
Okay.
We have the land development side. Um, and that's where most of our energy is there, and in uh, the equity, Central Capital Partners. And primarily it's just because conditions of the economy that we're dealing with. There's
Sure.
still a big need for housing, and there's going to be an opportunity for us to make a lot of money in apartments again, and
Sure.
we're not seeing that today.
Okay.
There's needs to be some things that need to continue to evolve and change for us to see that. We do see it coming. It's just not today. However, there's a huge need for housing. Um, there's a shortage there. We're just not seeing how to equate that into apartments. So that's where most of our focus is currently.
Okay. And are you focused primarily in Minnesota or other markets as far as your home building?
We are currently just Minnesota.
Okay.
With the equity raise, we will go into other markets. We're very familiar with the Utah market. We've got some connections in the Florida market, the Missouri market, the Arizona market, and so we will eventually branch into some of those. We're really good at what we do, and that can easily equate into other markets, we believe.
Okay. And then how about as far as the homes that you guys are building? Like, what types of homes are they?
Yeah, we're
Like,
super boring.
okay. Okay. Yeah.
There's no excitement to what we do. We are laser focused on efficiencies.
Okay,
If you're looking for a nice custom home, we're not we're not the builder.
sure.
I'll get friends will say, "Hey, can you build me a home?" I'm like, "No, we don't do that." Because we go in and effectively we look at a project and we want it to be over 20 units, ideally around 100 units,
Okay,
and we will build between 1 and 3 house plans, and that's it. And we build them over and over. And it really it gives us the ability to give great value to the consumer, and that's where the biggest need right now is first time buyer, entry level, affordable product. With the interest
sure.
rates as high as they are,
Right.
affordability is becoming tough. And so that's really where our sweet spot is creating systems and repeating it over and over and over. It reduces errors that cost a lot of money. We can be more efficient. When you go to the roofer and say, "I'm going to build 100 homes and I need the same shingles," they can give you better pricing.
Yeah.
It takes less manpower to manage it. There's just a lot of benefits, and so we just focus on being efficient and creating the most affordable product we can.
Okay. Oh, very good. How about within the company as far as just like core values, culture? How do you think about or how have you led, building out your culture and core values for the business?
Yeah, I love that question. We're both EOS companies. For those
Okay.
that don't know, that's Entrepreneurial Operating System. KIP operates on that. We operate on that. We find great value in that. And so, because of that, we really do focus on our core values. So, we've got 5 core values. We keep them pretty simple. We have definitions that go with them because each person's definition of them might be a little different, but we've got accountability, accountable for what we do and don't do. Compassion, everybody's going through something. Do we have compassion for those around us? Do the right thing. It doesn't matter what the cost is. Always do what's right. Growth, and a lot of people think growth as in we want to grow the business. Certainly, that's super important to us. But growth
Hmm.
is more about how are we growing individually? What am I doing to improve my skill sets? And not just for business, but how am I a better father? How am I a better husband?
Mm,
How am I a better friend? How am I a better disciple of Jesus Christ? How am I a better employer, coworker, all of that?
yes.
So, how am I growing individually? And then humility. I think
Huh,
that's such an important piece that we're not humble, we're not teachable. If we're not teachable, we're not growing. And
absolutely.
so we as EOS teaches, and you do the same thing, Kip, is we hire, we coach, and we terminate based on those core values.
Exactly. I mean, and it's powerful how, effective that is, but just how it crystallizes your decisions for hiring, firing, promoting. Um, it just crystallizes things so well. And things are still hard to do, make decisions, but it makes it straightforward.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point there is it doesn't, terminating somebody is quite certainly the most horrible thing you have to do, at least for
Absolutely.
me. I just there's
Yes.
nothing I like
I
about it.
know. Right.
I stress building up to it. I stress for days after it.
Hmm.
But you make a really good point. It helped crystallizes it. We always live by these core values, and if you're not living them, these are non-negotiables. These aren't aspirational. So it does make it simpler. You understand this, you know this, you're not living it. Why don't you go somewhere that fits you better?
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's okay. Like you're just not a fit for our core values or this core value. And it's okay, but that you can't be here if you don't fit it. But there are other places that, where the core values will be in alignment with you.
Because we're all a little different.
Right.
I've reviewed your core values, and
Uh-huh.
I love your core values, and they're different from ours. And it doesn't mean mine are wrong or yours are wrong. It means they're both amazing and fit our
Hmm.
cultures.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, maybe along those lines, just leadership. How has your personal definition of leadership evolved over the years?
You know, this wasn't going to be an EOS discussion, but one of the things they
Yeah.
teach in EOS, Wickman teaches is letting go of the vine.
Mm.
And that's been really the hardest thing for me is this is my baby.
Yeah.
I've developed this, I've grown it, and it's been really hard to let that go. Whereas I'm really learning there's great value in creating a vision for the company and helping that company and growing the people around me and seeing that vision, helping them see the vision, and then let the really amazing people that we have on the team execute on that vision.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's such an important thing to being a great leader. And a tool that I'm learning to master and be better at.
No, it's true. It's absolutely, and I mean, you talk about Gino Wickman. I talk a lot about Dan Sullivan too. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, I actually belong to his organization as
Okay,
well.
so you're a strategic coach. Okay, yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, I was just actually recorded another podcast earlier today, and I just introduced who not how to him when looking at problems instead of figuring out, how do I solve this? It's who do I find, whether I'm hiring or within my team, to solve this, and it really allows you to scale your business but you probably know
Did
better than I do since you're in strategic coach.
did you guys discuss all 3 of the books?
So we didn't. I mean,
So I would encourage everybody.
right?
They've got a
Yeah,
whole series of 3 of them.
yeah.
So Benjamin Hardy wrote the books based on Dan Sullivan's principles, and they've got The Gap and the Gain, and it's really about how often we think about what we didn't do versus what we did, and it's focusing on the progress we made versus we didn't. And then the next in the series is Who Not How, and it's just what you said. Focus on who's going to do it, not how. I'm guilty of this all the time. I focus on, well, how am I going to get this done? It's like, forget that. Get somebody really amazing that has the
Right.
skill set to do it and find a who. And then it's 10x is easier than 2x. And that book talks about, if I tell somebody grow your business 2 times, there's hundreds and hundreds of ways I can do that. If I tell you grow your business 10 times, well, there's only a few. And so now you can get super focused. So it's sometimes easier to focus on a few, which then means you can grow your business 10 times, and it's easier than focusing on 100 things to grow it 2 times. And I would encourage everybody that's in business, thinking about being in business in a leadership role, I'd read all 3 of those books and read them in that order. And if you've read one of them, if they're out of order, who cares? Still read the other 2.
100% agree. I 10x is easier than 2x was the first one I read, just because that was the first one I got introduced to. And then I've since given all those books to my entire team, my family, my friends. I'm like, these are absolute must reads, no matter what you're focused
Yeah.
on in life, whether it's your own business or just life. I mean,
When I first read Who Not How, I loved it so much, we gave 100 of them away.
that's amazing.
Now
Yeah.
I'll say Ben Hardy gave them to me, so it's not like I was out a lot of money, but
Uh-huh. Yeah. And it's even just the title. It's just good to, like, when you're thinking about how am I going to solve this, just to think that in your head, who not how. And in
yeah,
fact, it's so funny. I have, like, every year I have like 3 words that are like the focus of the year. And I literally have number one, 10x, not 2x. This is right on my computer. And then I have who, not how. And then my last one's unreasonable. I don't know if you ever read the book Unreasonable Hospitality,
yeah.
which is incredible. And our philosophy for our business this year is unreasonable recruiting. So, I mean, those are the 3 things that I look at every single day. And when I'm making decisions, I'm looking at that. Um,
Yeah, I think it teaches such an important principle is what is it? Whatever you focus on is what you're going to find.
right.
And
Yes.
I think just putting those key things on your monitor that you're seeing constantly as a reminder, this is what I'm focused on. Because I'm a big believer in you'll find whatever you're looking for.
Right. 100%. 100%. Well, maybe talk about, like, your team, investing in people. Like, how do you think about that? What's your philosophy of investing within or investing in your people on your team?
Now, as you mentioned, so I'm a member of Strategic Coach. That's Dan Sullivan's organization, and I've actually got several members that are members of Strategic Coach. That
Awesome.
they go quarterly to learn and brush up on their skills. We have a book. I read a ton, and when I say read, I use that term loosely. 'Cause it's about 70% that I'm actually listening to books and
Uh-huh.
30% that I physically read the book.
Yeah.
But our employees, we pay them $50 every time they read a book. And I don't
That's
care what it
great.
is. Just expand your mind. I don't care what the book, we don't care about the content. We do have them write it on a board because we like that because we can go see, oh, what did Kip read? I want to see what he's reading these days.
Yeah.
But outside of that, that's the only rule. Write it on the board so everybody can see what each other's reading to get good ideas. We encourage people. We tell people, if you come and say, I want to go to a conference, and we say, well, what are you doing to invest in yourself? If they're not reading books or listening to podcasts or going to other events, I'm probably not going to send you because now you're just going for the vacation.
Hmm.
Albeit you go to a conference, have fun. If
Yeah.
golfing's part of it, go enjoy that. Go out to meals with friends. But we send people to conferences. We've got our education budget is over 100,000, well over $100,000.
That's
And we've
awesome.
got not very many people, we're a few $100,000, but it's just so important that, there's what is that saying? It's something like, what if I invest in my people and they leave? And they say, well, what if you don't and they stay?
Right. That's exactly it. Yes.
And so I really like that philosophy. And so we're just constantly looking for opportunities to improve and grow. And I try to lead by example, being in strategic coach. I'm part of another group called Genius Network. Listening to podcasts like this one. These are phenomenal resources to listen to this podcast and think on a higher level and a bigger plane.
Oh, that's very good. You're the second person to mention Genius Network. How do you like that group?
I love it. It's fantastic. I The principle I like to teach young people that are trying to get going is okay, what do I do? What do I do to grow? And I'm a huge believer in we become the average of our peer group. And so I say,
Yes.
all right, I want you to think about who are the 5 people you spend the most time with. Now I also want you to think about where is your life? Where do you want to be 10, 20 years from now? And I say, okay, of those 5 people, how many of them are living that life? And if I ever get an answer that's one or more, I say, your dreams aren't very big and I can't help you.
Uh-huh.
Usually it's 0. It's like, okay, so if you're going to become the average of that 5, what are you going to do about that? How do you fix that? It's not like all of a sudden, I want to have this big business or I want to have, be this kind of a father or whatever it is. But how do you fix that? Because those people don't want to hang out with you when you're young. And,
Right.
and so I say, the way you do that is through reading, through podcasts, through, if I listen to your podcast regularly, I'm listening to people that have been there, they've done that, and they're thinking big. So often when we're trying to get going, all we hear from people is, why are you going to do that? Or that's silly, or you're never going to get there. We don't need that. We don't need that
Uh-huh.
in our lives when we have big dreams. And so you
Yes.
do it through podcasts, you do it through reading. And then eventually you can buy your way into those groups.
Right.
And
Right.
effectively, that's what Genius Network is it's there's about 250 members, give or take,
Okay.
and it's I think the average business does 10-20 million dollars a year in revenue, and
Okay.
so there's people that have businesses that are doing 1 billion a year. There's people, our company that will range 50 to 100 million a year. So it's all over the board, but you're just with big thinkers, and they're not people that are going to say that's a dumb idea. Why are you doing
Mhm.
that? And so that really is my core five is comes from Genius Network because they're big thinkers and making me think bigger. And we had a breakout in the last session. I said, I'm really discouraged about this and I'm not sure what to do. And I'm wondering if I wind it down. And the whole group's like, heck no, keep going. And it's like, all right, I love it. And it wasn't related to businesses. I've got a cattle ranch.
Oh,
And
wow. Awesome.
takes a lot of energy and it's
I'm
like, okay, is
sure.
that the best use of my time or not? And but I'm around people that are like, You're passionate about it, you love it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then just go find a who. Forget working on your
Yes.
cattle ranch."
Yeah.
And so I know that principle of who, not how, but yet I wasn't living it in that moment. And so I'm with people that were thinking bigger than me in that moment that made me realize, yeah, I know the principle, now live it.
That's very good. And the other thing you touched on was just people in your network saying, "Why do you wanna do that? Why do you wanna do this?" And I think it was from 10x is easier than 2x when just like the mindset shift of and I was just literally talking to someone yesterday about this. Like if you want something and people are like, well, why do you want that house or that car or that cattle ranch? It's okay to say, I want it because I want it. Like I don't have to justify it. I want it. And it doesn't matter what it is that you want, but that is the reason. I don't need to justify it to you or feel guilty about it. I want this because I want it. And that's
Yeah,
that's the answer.
it's interesting. Dan Sullivan, he writes a series of books. They're all short books, and his intent is that they're short enough you can read it in an hour-long plane ride.
Yeah.
And he's got probably, I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if he's got 100 of them. One of them is want what you want.
Right.
It's that very thing. My wife and I, we went to England in this last spring. And I remember us standing there. My wife's talking to somebody. They're like, "Why would you want to go to England?" And my wife said, "Why wouldn't I want to go to England?"
Right. Yes.
And yeah, it's like want what you want. It's okay to want something bigger and better, and eh, go for it. And just don't
Right.
associate. Don't let those people corrupt your mind that are going to tell you otherwise.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And the other thing that made me think of that when you're talking about the cattle ranch, I'm in a similar group, and someone was talking about, they have their business that's doing well, but they have this real passion project on this nonprofit side. And he was just like struggling with, how do I divide my time between these two? And I really am passionate about this. Um, and we just suggested, and we brought that up, like hire a who, hire you focus on your business that generates all the revenue that's funding this nonprofit passion project, but hire someone to run the nonprofit for you so you can still be involved, but you don't have to run the day to day and you can focus on what's generating the revenue to make it happen. And then you get the best of both, but you're not splitting your time trying to run both of them. And I mean, it was like a light bulb moment for him. He's like, yes,
And then it goes one step further is well, who's your who finder? You've got a
right,
business that you're an expert at that of,
right.
okay, so now I'm overwhelmed. Where do I find that person? I think the answer to every step is find a who. Okay,
Yes.
so I want to do this nonprofit. I'm passionate about it. But now, well, I got to go find somebody that's well, then go find a who, go find a who finder. And,
Uh-huh.
and you're a perfect example of you guys are experts at finding who's. Well, now I
Right.
just solved two problems.
Yeah. I wish maybe we should rebrand ourselves Who Finder instead
Who
of Get
finders.
Search. I have used that analogy a bunch with people though that have read Dan's stuff. I'm like, I'm your Who Finder,
Yeah.
or we are, I should say. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah. You've got an entire team that's what you guys are
Right.
really good at. We're really good at developing. We're really good at putting projects together. We're really good at building. We're really good at real estate, but we're terrible at finding the right who's.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I need really good who's. And so let somebody else. But, if you guys went to build, you'd be terrible at building, probably just
Right.
like I'd be. So find people that are really good at what they do and engage them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. How about along those lines, how do you currently like attract and retain high performance people within your business?
I mean, we use who finders.
Okay.
I mean, that's a big key.
Yeah.
Um, and then just make sure you've got good reputation management.
Yeah.
What's out there. An example, I've got a pretty active LinkedIn page,
Uh-huh.
and that really does a lot when you've got top talent. You know, a lot of times we're looking at, oh, okay, let's go find the right person. Well, it's just important they find the right company to be with that
Right.
they're pitching to. And it makes a big difference when you're managing your reputation and people can see what you're about.
Mhm.
Um, I can remember once, this was years ago, and it taught me a powerful lesson. I had an employee that resigned. And in the exit, it's like, okay, help me understand. And he goes, well, I've got this really great opportunity in Texas, and I'm going to affiliate with this company. They're doing over $10 million a year in revenue, and that's going to help me grow. Pause, and I said, you know how much we did last year? He goes, no. I said, we did 60 million last year. And his eyes got big, and I'm not doing a very good job messaging, am I?
Yeah.
And so that was a principle. It's really important that people know who you are and what do you represent. I'm amazed just people knowing what our core values are.
Yeah.
We talked about that. They're like, yeah, I'd really like to learn more about being with your company because those core values really align with who I am as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How about, just an investment strategy? When you're growing the business, looking for opportunities, what strategies have proven most effective for you in capitalizing on high growth opportunities? Whether it's plots of land to develop or how do you look at the market, look for
I
opportunities?
think it really evolves depending on the market conditions. So as example, in 2011, 12, 13, we were really focused on working through distressed assets the bank owned. And we made a lot of money and had a lot of fun doing it. Well, that dried up and then there was nothing developed. And so then we shifted focus and we started developing land, and then 2016, 17, 18, we saw some opportunities in the apartment world. So we jumped in and we were doing some of that. And we talked about earlier, I think it's so important that you'll find what you're looking for. And today, I would say is a perfect example. In our industry, everybody's talking about interest rates. They're saying, well, I got to wait for interest rates to come back down. That's a really good idea. You should do that because that gives more opportunity for me.
Right.
If
Yes.
if you look at historicals, interest rates were really low in the late 60s. Early 70s, they jump up. and they just continued to climb into the 80s. We're seeing in the high teens interest rates. They didn't come back down until 1993. So all those people that sat and said, I'm going to wait for interest rates to come down, lost on a ton of wealth over
Right.
a 20-year period. And I think we're in a similar situation, but the opportunities we see today are entirely different than what we were doing 3 years ago, and likely we'll pivot again in the next 2 or 3 years to see other opportunities. So we try to stay pretty agile. We try to stay humble and see what the opportunities are. And then we look at a friend, Keith Cunningham, wrote a book called The Road Less Stupid.
Mm,
And I
mm,
love that book.
huh.
Just the title describes Keith's, just frank style, but he teaches a principle that, you look at every deal and you say, what's the best can happen? What's the worst can happen? And if you don't have a long list for both, don't do the deal
Yeah.
because every deal has risks. So if you don't see
Mhm.
risks, you're missing something. Don't do it. When you're done, you look at that, you say, here's the best, here's the worst. Can I live with the worst? And if the answer is yes, because it's worth the upside, then you go do the deal. If
Uh-huh.
you can't live with the worst, then pass on it. And, that evolves as you have more money, you have more experience. What I can live with in the worst case scenario changes with
Right.
maturity and experience. And so it's hard to say what the best investment strategy is because, the day somebody's listening to this, it can be entirely different than what it is the day we're
Right.
recording this.
Yeah. How about with your fund? How do people or who are the types of people, groups, whether it's institutional or family offices or who's investing into the fund and how would someone invest into your fund?
So long term, we want to open it up to anybody. Right now,
Mhm.
it's just accredited investors. So you've got to have a million net worth or be making $200,000 a year
Mhm.
to be able to invest. And a lot of funds historically, they'll say, all right, this is a $50 million fund, and we're going to invest it in a bunch of places. We've decided initially we're doing it per project. And so
Okay.
somebody could go in and say, I'm going to invest in this project. It's for sale housing. And you, in effect, to become a partner in that. So you're investing, you could go out physically see it. There's a tangible product. Um, and so it's also got to be patient investors. So if somebody, I want to invest and I need a regular dividend, this is not the
Right.
investment
Yeah.
because for sale housing, we got to develop the land, we got to build the first houses, we got to close 'em. You could be well into a year before you see any kind of a dividend. And so, it's accredited investors and those that have a little bit more patient money. But on the flip side, they get a really great return. And so we throw a project on. Once it's funded, we take that back off and we put the next project on.
Okay.
The day of this recording, we've got two projects that are for sale housing. One's a little bit larger, one's a little bit smaller. That somebody invests in, and then it's a 2 to 4 year project, depending on which one. And then they actually have some ownership and some real estate that's pretty cool. And then
Yeah.
we get to build wealth together.
Yeah. That's fantastic. That's very, very good. How about free markets? We're here in America, capitalism. How has the free market system helped you in your business and doing real estate development?
Without the free market, we wouldn't be in business.
Right.
That's the reality. I'm a big believer in the free market. And unfortunately, the free market has really been corrupted by the government for
Mhm.
quite some time.
Indeed.
Um, we pumped a ton of cash into the economy due to COVID, and we did it under two presidencies, and we did it under two different parties controlling the House, and we just kept pumping money, and that's really what drove our inflation. And so that's a perfect example. There's always opportunity. The opportunity today is there's still a huge need for housing, but now I can afford a lot less house, so we focus on the affordable housing right now because that's where people have money to be able to buy houses. They
Uh-huh.
just can't buy as much.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's part of it is, we love the free market. We love to being able to do things and grow things and create for people. And sometimes when the government gets in the way of that, you say, okay, well, what's the new opportunity that
Uh-huh.
we can present to benefit the economy?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, in your business, I mean, you have to deal with the government for
Oh
every
yeah.
step of the way. I mean,
Yeah, we
jeez.
develop land and it's
Yeah.
anywhere from a year to 5 or 6 years before we can actually do anything with that land to get through all of the government agencies. And some of it's pretty important. I'm a fan of protecting our environment. I don't want to destroy our environment.
Uh-huh.
And it's really important we have a good balance of protecting our environment and also not making it so expensive people can't afford a house.
Right. Absolutely.
And we're in interesting times. At the time of this recording, our the entire political system is in disarray and interesting times.
Yeah, it is truly unbelievable on every level.
Yeah, yeah, it's almost like unfathomable.
Right. I know. I mean, you can't write this stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, craziness. How about I don't know, in what ways do you personally like advocate for capitalism or free markets, whether or I guess maybe outside your business activities, just in life? How are you advocating or promoting capitalism if you do?
I can actually use an example. It's related to business, but you and I are both in the state of Minnesota,
Uh-huh.
and a year and a half ago, the legislature, in their infinite wisdom, decided they were going to introduce a bill that made it illegal for a business to own a house.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I don't think they understand what they're proposing here because in the state of Minnesota, the way that bill was written, just in the Minneapolis St. Paul area, the day that bill would have been signed, 32,000 people would have had to been evicted from their homes.
Uh-huh.
And so I went down and I testified in the House, I testified in the Senate, and it was interesting. It was, oh, that's not the intent. I'm like, I don't know what your intent is, but that's what's written. And by the way, we were about to build another 150 homes this year. We were going to turn into rentals, a rental community.
Uh-huh.
Like, oh, that's not the intent either. I'm like, well, we might want to rewrite this.
Uh-huh.
Because using that as example, one of the things we shared is we own apartments. We also own houses. The people that live in our apartments, generally speaking, all want to own a house
Uh-huh.
eventually. The people that live in our houses, generally speaking, don't want to own a house. That's why they're renting a house.
Uh-huh.
And so there's this
Yes.
misconception of everybody wants to own a house and big companies are buying them all. Therefore, individuals can't buy houses. Like that's actually not true. And if you think about legislation like that, what does that do if all of a sudden we have to evict 32,000 people in one metro? Where are they going to go? They're all going to go to 3 and 4 bedroom apartments. What's that going to do to rents of 3 bedroom apartments?
Mhm.
Well, now what happens to all the 32,000 people that used to be in 3 bedroom apartments? Well, they can't afford it. And now they're going to the 2 bedroom apartments. And what happens to the two people that now are displaced from the two? They go to the ones. Now, what happens to 32,000 people that used to be in the 1 bedroom apartments are the most vulnerable?
Mhm.
We now have 32,000 people that are homeless in the state of Minnesota. That's what happens when we don't let free market happen.
Right.
I mean, who's kidding who? If you came to me and said, build 2,000 houses and I have the lots and I'll sell them all, I'm building 2,000 houses this
Right.
weekend as fast as I can.
Right.
So it's interesting, but we were seeing this all over the country. Luckily it got no legs, but in Congress there was a similar bill that was being proposed. So we try to stay fairly involved and
Uh-huh.
help educate those stakeholders and help them to see, you know, they had good intentions, I think just fairly misguided.
Right. Yeah, we know what the where good intentions, the road of good actions leads us.
Yeah, exactly.
How about, I mean, you kind of touched on rental, like home rental communities. I mean, that I've seen that a lot. Is that a trend that's continuing? The whole developments that are, residential home rental
Yeah, it
communities?
is. One of the challenges with an individual rental is a lot of people will do it, and I think it's a really wise decision if you're trying to build up a rental portfolio. You'll see somebody, I'll buy a house on FHA, live there a couple years, and then buy a second home, and I keep that one as a rental. And that's a great
Mhm.
way to start building up a portfolio.
Mhm.
But it's also really hard because now I've got a house here and a house there that I'm trying to manage, and it's hard to keep them looking nice. And so
Mhm.
rentals sometimes get a bad reputation and sometimes it's earned because I put somebody in there, they don't take care of the yard, they make the entire neighborhood nice. Or
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who want to rent houses. And the nice thing about building an entire community is we can now control it and we mow all of the lawns at the same time. It's
Uh-huh.
easier to take care of their needs. Just like an apartment complex, if I've got 200 units, I'm going to have somebody there that's maintaining those apartments. And so if your furnace goes out, I can go look at that immediately and fix that. Same thing. If I've got a bunch of houses together, we can keep them looking nice. We can take better needs of those renters. And there's a lot of people that want or need to rent houses for various reasons. And so we're really high on they call it the build for rent
Uh-huh.
community, and that's where you build an entire community. We're really high on that. And we will be doing a couple of those in some other markets across the nation over the next coming years.
Okay. Is there a certain profile or just type of people that are typically in those buy for rent or those build for rent communities?
It's a combination of people that just don't want the hassle. I wanna have a yard for my kids, for my dog. I just don't want the hassle of when the furnace goes out, I have to deal with it. I don't want to have to worry about mowing my lawn. Um, we'll see quite a bit of I was transferred for work reasons, but I only plan on being here for 2, 3, 4, 5 years and eventually
Mhm.
going back to where I came from.
Yeah.
Therefore, I don't wanna buy a house. There's quite a few reasons. It's quite varied actually. Whereas our apartments, most of them that live in our apartments, it's because they're trying to save up enough money to buy a house.
Yeah.
And so the demographics fairly narrow comparatively, but it's pretty
Yeah.
broad of who the renters are of houses.
Okay. How about like the younger generation, millennials, people younger that are they coming into the rental home community or is that not a
We do see
demographic for
quite a
that?
bit of it. Young
Okay.
professionals that, I'm getting going, I'm starting a family, I wanna have a little bit more space. The apartment doesn't meet my needs because one or both of us work from home. We have the dog, we're having a new
Huh.
baby coming, we have a baby, I wanna have that yard. But back to I'm pretty happy with my lifestyle and I don't need the hassle of maintaining a home. And so I
Yeah.
love the idea of having a new home, something that's newer that we can enjoy, but somebody else will take care of it for me and I can focus on the other things that are important to me.
Sure. Do you typically have like amenities, pools and things like in fitness facilities, or is it more just the homes in those communities?
We currently don't. All of ours
Okay.
are just the homes.
Okay.
I've got some friends that are highly amenitized that have had some huge success, to where they do have a clubhouse, they've got a pool, they've got basketball courts, pickleball courts,
Mhm.
and that'll also usually attract a little more affluent clientele,
Sure.
whereas we're primarily focused on affordability.
Yeah.
Whereas they're focused a little more on the affluent, but they've had some huge success. There is a big demand for that.
Yeah. You see a lot of that just with friends that are developers in particularly Florida, but Florida, Arizona, even like mobile home communities that
Yeah.
have, I mean, these mobile homes are like, I mean, it's not, I mean, it's
It
from normal ones up to, $1 million things, but the communities, I mean, having like boat docks on the water and pools and club, I mean, all the things you're describing, but like that's a real powerfully strong, stable real estate piece down in some of those markets.
yeah, yeah, Arizona, it's really on fire. Texas, Georgia, Florida are some of the markets that it's
Uh-huh.
really taken off.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wild. How about kind of thinking of young entrepreneurs? Any advice you would give to an aspiring, I mean, not even necessarily young, but just an aspiring entrepreneur, whether they're just starting out in their career or they've been working for someone else and they're thinking about going off on their own and starting their own business, whether it's in real estate or otherwise.
I think a lot of it goes back to what we talked about earlier. It really the mindset is important and who you associate with. Make sure you got a sphere of people that are going to build you up, lift you, encourage you, be your
Mhm.
champion, cheer you on. It, and then really, you've got to broaden your horizon. Listening to these types of podcasts,
Yes.
reading books, just be a consumer. And then you just have to discipline to execute on those things. A lot of people will be like, oh, you're disciplined and you like it. It's like, I'm disciplined. I don't like it. There's a difference between discipline
Right.
this morning I was up at 5 a.m. and I did my resistance training and then I did a 2 mile run and then I sat in the sauna and I read some scripture and then I planned my day sitting in the sauna and then I got out. I don't like any of that. I
Yeah.
like the results, but I don't
Uh-huh.
enjoy running. I don't
Yeah.
enjoy weightlifting. It's horrible. It sucks. But I enjoy the outcome. And I think that's really important is having discipline, and staying focused on what it is you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. That is so powerful. How about any particular podcasts that you recommend or listen to that are, kind of your go-tos or regular listens?
I mean, your podcast is fantastic because
Thank
you're
you.
bringing on a variety of people. And I think what's super important is I often will get asked because I read so much. I'll get
Yeah.
asked what's your favorite books?
Yeah,
Well, what's my favorite today could be very different than what it was 3 months ago
for
because
sure.
my circumstances and needs change.
Mm.
And I used to be a finisher. If I start something, I've got to finish it. Like, man, there's so many good books out there. Why listen to a crappy book or read a crappy
Uh-huh.
book? Why listen to a crappy podcast? And so if it's not speaking to you, but it's interesting how often somebody will recommend a book and I'll go look. I'm like, oh, I have that book. And I'll discover I started reading it 4 years ago and put it down in chapter 3.
Uh-huh.
And I'll like, okay, if they recommend it, I'll try it. And I'll read it. It's like, wow, that really spoke to me. And so I think it's important to go to what's speaking to you at any given time
Yes.
because your mind knows what you need. Your mind knows if you're focused on, I love vision boards.
Mhm.
It's similar to you having those statements on your monitor.
Yeah.
That's a reminder of what are you working towards, what's important. And then vision boards are similar. It's a constant reminder, and your mind will find solutions to those things. And so your mind will be drawn to podcasts or books that solve your problems now.
Uh-huh.
And so I think you just have to stay really flexible.
Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. And so, there's some books or I suppose podcasts, but for me, it's been books that you've read before, read many times before, but different periods in your life, they mean something totally different for you. Even fictional stories. I mean, that, some of the classics, and it hits you totally different at different ages or different stages of life, different cycles in your business.
I just finished Chris Voss. He wrote a book, Never Split the Difference. And I
Oh,
read
it's the
that book
best
when
negotiation book I've ever read.
yeah, I read the
Oh
book
my
when it
gosh,
first
that's
came
good.
out.
Yes.
Well, I met Chris recently. He's part of Genius Network. I met him and I'm like, I should read his book again.
Yeah.
And being part of Genius Network is really tough because I'd say half the people have written a book. And
Okay.
so try to support everybody. It's like, man, my reading list is getting long.
Uh-huh.
But like I'm going to support it. So I read the book again just this last month. And it was interesting because I got entirely different new insights reading it today than I did when I first read it when it first came out. And I don't know, his book's probably 7 or 8 years old. I don't
Yeah.
remember. And so I think you make a really good point of what my needs are different. And so when I read it today, I might get a different purpose out of it than when I did however long ago when I read it the first time.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of books I will actually read multiple times throughout my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. I mean, that's one that I think I first got on Audible, listened to it, and it's like, this is so good. I need to physically buy the book and read it with a highlighter. And, like those are the best. Like,
Yes.
you know, hit it on Audible, read it with a highlighter, or then do it again, listening to the Audible while you're reading the book with your highlighter and your pen. I mean, it's just like,
I find for me, I love that point because I find sometimes I'll listen to a book and do the same thing. Like I got to read it and really digest it.
yeah,
But I also, the same thing will happen is different principles will stand out to me listening to it versus reading it.
yeah,
And
right.
I think that's a
That's totally
powerful
true.
principle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll listen to books when I'm running or something as well. And when you don't have the undivided attention, sometimes reading it, you see things
Uh-huh.
you missed.
Yeah. It's funny. Because I do a lot of running too. Um, but I always listen to music or nothing. And I never had listened to a book or an Audible or a podcast while running. I just didn't seem to work right. But I did David Goggins' book.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
That'll make you run faster.
first book, it was unbelievable. It was like here in Minnesota, it was a 90-degree day. It was super humid. I went for a run at like 5 in the afternoon, like the worst time. And it was amazing. I mean, I just was hyped up. And then I think that Saturday, maybe the next day, I was training for a marathon and it was absolutely downpouring. And I was listening to Goggins as I'm running in the rain. Nobody else is out. And I had like a 15-mile run or something. And it was just like, I was so hyped up. I'm like screaming Goggins as the rain's just pouring down on me. I'm dripping wet. And
It's
anyway,
like,
so
man, if he can run 100 miles in the middle of the
right.
desert, I suppose I could do
Yes.
this.
Oh yeah. But yeah, and then that really changed my mindset on with certain books. I can listen to them while I'm running, and
Yeah.
because you can really get that hyper focus. You just kind
Yeah.
of get in the zone and get the runner's high and you're just like dialed in.
I I think you teach a pretty important thing here, and that is you got to figure out what works for you.
Right.
If listening to book works for me while I'm running, that doesn't mean it works for you. I don't listen to anything if I drive in the morning. That's my just thinking time. That's when I'm processing. For a lot of people, that's their best time to listen to a book. I think it's so important is gather information and ideas and figure out what works for you to succeed because it's not the same for all of us.
Right. No, absolutely. And it's just, yeah, that compounding effect of, that 15-minute drive or 30-minute drive, listening to what inspires you and hits you, but just doing that repetitively as part of your discipline and routine, um, the compounding effect of doing that for years and years and years versus just listening to music, if that works for you. I mean, just the amount of content you can consume and ideas, it's
Yeah.
it's profound.
Yeah. And and track it. I think that's the
Right.
important thing. You ask about how do you go and it's pretty easy to say I'm going to read 50 books this year or 10 books this year and think that you're doing it. When I track, so as an example, I do kickboxing 3 times a week at a gym with my family. And,
Awesome.
and then I run 3 times a week, alternating days. And then I do strength training. I try to do that 6 times a week. And it's just a quick program I do. I track that. I have a chart that shows that I put a check mark. Did I do my run today? Because it's really easy for us to say, yeah, I do that 6 times a week, or yeah, I do it 5 times a week. And then all of a sudden you look back and you go, oh, actually, maybe I'm only doing it once or twice a week.
Uh-huh.
But if we can hold ourselves accountable to, well, what are my goals? If I want to read 10 books, track it. And that means if I want to read 10 books in a year, that, by week 5, I have better finished one.
Yeah.
And if I really want, I've been working really hard. My goal is to have 12% body fat.
Excellent.
That's a target I have. I'm at 15% right now, but I have been laser focused on this for 2 years. And for 18 months, I made very little progress and it would have been easy to give up.
Uh-huh.
But if I'm tracking my progress and I'm saying, okay, what are the, um, uh, Chris McChesney writes the book. It's 40X, 4 Disciplines of Execution.
Okay.
And they teach the principle of everything has a leading indicator. And so, you know, 12% body fat's like the perfect example to use for this. Well, lagging indicator is 12% body fat.
Right.
The leading, getting on the scale and going, oh, geez, I'm still fat. That's a lagging indicator. The
Uh-huh.
leading indicator is what did I eat today?
Right.
Did I exercise today? Did I take my vitamins today? What are the things that are going to lead to that? And if I'm doing the right things, eventually I will get to that 12% body fat. But just getting on the scale and saying I'm still fat, it's not getting me anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I track, I'm very specific and I track what are those leading indicators that are going to get me there. And I think that principle holds true in everything. If I'm trying to sell something, we sell houses. If selling a house, if that's all I'm tracking, well, that's a lagging indicator. You
Uh-huh.
know, that shows what I did previous. What's important is what are those steps that are going to help me sell another house? That's the leading indicator that I really need to
Yes.
track. And if the leading indicators aren't getting to that goal, then I need to adjust my leading indicators.
Mhm.
If eating 3,000 calories a day is not getting me my goal, well, I better adjust my calorie intake per day and say 3,000 maybe is too much. So I need to adjust that leading indicator. But if I just get on the scale and say I'm still fat, well, I don't know why.
Right. So true. So yeah, it's so funny. I talk about checklists. This is what I do every day. So it's called the power list. So I'm in a group with Andy Frisella, who wrote this. Um, so it's power list, your daily guide to dominating your life, but I'll just flip to a blank one here. Um, but it's really you have the top 5 things you need to do during the day to
Oh,
advance your business. And then we're reading 10 pages every day of a book. You write that down. And then at the bottom, you check, was today a win or a loss? So you have to get all 5 of those done, read your 10 pages, and then it's a win. And we talk about winning the day and then winning the week and winning the month. Um, and it also gives you freedom in that these are the 5 things I need to do to move my business forward or my life forward today. And once you get those done, the rest of your day is just gravy. You can, I mean,
How long have
being
you been doing
facetious.
that, Kip?
What's that?
How long have you been doing that?
Boy, I've been doing it for almost 5 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
So what
And
are the
it's,
results you've seen from it?
I mean, it's our business has absolutely transformed, uh, just personally, professionally. And the other thing is, if you, and I don't do this, but if you have the same thing on there every day for like, I don't know, remember exactly what his thing was for maybe a week or two, you need to take it off. That's a habit now and put something new on there. Mine's different every single day because they really are the key things for the day. Um, but it's, creating habits. And, but once it is a habit, that can't be a powerless thing anymore. You need to add something else. Um, but it's been super profound. And it also just, it keeps you accountable. Like you said, like I'm these are leading indicators. I'm getting these things done. I'm tracking them. I mean, it's right there staring me in the face. And if I cheat, you're only cheating yourself. I mean, nobody else is ever going to see this. Nobody else is ever going to know. I mean, it's the contract with yourself. Um, yeah, another thing we talk about in our company and in some of the groups I'm in is just keeping the promises to yourself. I mean, that's how you build confidence, and true, fortitude is keeping the promises to yourself. We talk about so much about people with mental health issues and people struggling with confidence, but it's really about keeping the promises to yourself. I mean, that's where you start and where you build your confidence. It doesn't come from other people. It doesn't come from, your achievements. It's keeping the promises you make to yourself. Because you are the only person that you're going to spend every single second of your entire life with. Nobody else, even as close as your wife is to you or your kids or anyone in your life, no one is with you 24 hours a day, 365. Um, and so you got to keep those promises to yourself.
Yeah. I love that principle of keeping your promises. And I think that's where, your book that you're using, that you track those in.
Yeah.
And I just use a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Um, and I review my goals each day that are written down. I've got it on my nightstand. I've got it on my desk.
Yes.
And I think your principle of keeping the promise yourself that you're teaching there, I think is so important. And I'm really, I'm not great at keeping my promises to myself. That's why I track it,
Right.
because then I'm holding myself accountable to what's important to me.
Yeah.
And so I love that principle you just taught.
And then just with this in particular, then at the end of the day, you can look, I completed all these things, even
Yeah.
though you might feel like this was a successful day, but you can look and here's evidence. I did what I said I was going to do. Today was a success. It was a win. Um, even though you might already feel it is, here's proof and evidence that you did it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, I
good.
mean, maybe thinking about legacy. I don't know how much time you spent thinking about like building a legacy in life, building the kingdom of God here on earth. I mean, how do you think about legacy in your business, in your life? Um,
For
if,
me,
if at all.
using EOS terms, our purpose, cause, and passion,
Mm,
for me, really is universal, whether it's in my personal life, whether it's at work, wherever it is. And that is, I improve everything I touch.
mm,
And so it's, if we're doing a subdivision, a commercial subdivision of housing, whatever it is, are we improving it? Is it better off as a result of our involvement? People that are working on our team, are we helping them be their very best? The
mm.
funny thing is I've built, as a company, we've built thousands and thousands of homes. I've never lived in a new home. Every house I've ever lived in was existing, and I saw a vision and we improved it.
Yes.
Um, and I'm very involved in my faith, and those in the faith community. Are we improving them? Are we helping them be their best? And so for me, that really is what gets me excited. You know, is everything that I'm involved in, could it be better off as a result of my involvement? And that's what gets me excited. Is the answer is I don't know if it always is, but that's what I aspire for.
Yeah. That's fantastic. How about I don't know, looking back on your career thus far, any particular decisions or actions that you've taken that have been, you would say, most pivotal in your success?
Yeah, it was a complete failure. A complete failure in my life. that was pivotal into my success. We talked about, we had some Radio Shack franchises. We
Yes.
had the biggest franchise and we were doing amazing things. It was a ton of fun. And in Radio Shack specifically, you lose money the first, second quarter, you break even the third, you make all your money in the fourth.
Okay.
And so in the
Huh.
summer, you're figuring out what do you need for the Christmas. Radio Shack used to sell remote control cars and all kinds of
Yes.
gadgets. And so it was the Christmas gadget store, really.
Yeah.
And so in the summer, we'd look at what are the media buys? Back when newspaper inserts were really a big thing for Christmas time, radio spots, TV spots, we'd see what those ad buys are. And then we'd buy inventory based on that in the summer and
Huh.
we'd get it in the store. And, so it was, the principle that Keith Cunningham taught me of what's the best, what's the worst, can I live with the worst applies here. And also understanding your financials. The language of business is accounting.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't need to be an accountant, but I should probably understand the language of business, which is accounting if I want to be successful.
Yeah.
So we bought a ton of inventory going, okay, we keep growing. I'm going to buy another percentage increase of inventory. And so we did that. And then this thing called September 11th happened.
Huh.
And that was, I believe, a Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. We had 3 stores and we had 1 customer the entire week in all 3 stores. That
Wow.
customer came in and it used to be, before we all had cable and satellite TVs were prevalent, you'd have these rabbit ears that we put on the
Uh-huh.
TVs and that's how you get the local station. They came in to get rabbit ears to put on their TV that was on their desk so they could watch the news while they had to work.
Huh.
The day after Christmas, we had 90% of our inventory still on the floors at our stores.
Wow.
I did everything in my power to survive that, and I couldn't. And I ended up having to file personal bankruptcy.
Wow.
And it was the hardest thing ever for me in any form of business. It was devastating. It was embarrassing. The shame that goes with that of not being self-sufficient and everything. It was horrible, but it taught me so many powerful lessons of you've got to understand your finances. You've got to understand the risks and do what you can to mitigate it. And not a story I'm proud of, but a story I learned a lot from.
Mm.
And we've got really strong businesses today because of that failure.
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, I mean, uh, everyone has said, and it's true. You learn the most from your failures. I mean, and I mean that's super tough. But for entrepreneurs, not being afraid to fail too, or just having micro failures along the way, and just taking some risks. But I mean, that is part of the deal. I mean, again, in the groups I'm in, every single person to a person has had something like that happen, or it's happened multiple times throughout their business career. But yet they've learned so much, and they've built, you know, like you, 50, $100 million companies multiple times, $1 billion companies, but they've all been through the valley of the shadow of the dark.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's just,
It's not fun. It's not easy, but it can be a powerful learning tool if you'll allow it to be.
mhm. No, very, yeah, thanks for sharing that. That is powerful and that is real. God, Radio Shack was such an iconic brand. You talk about remote control cars. I mean, I had so many of those as a kid, and they all came from our local Radio Shack. Oh,
That was another thing that really
yes.
shaped my future too, is I love a challenge and I love making
Mhm.
things better. And they used one of our stores. Radio Shack corporate came in and they did a training video in our store
Huh.
because they said, this is the model store. Everything was organized. It was clean. It was stocked appropriately. They came in and did a training video that they used for other stores. And I was pretty proud of that. And for me, that gets me excited that, we created something that is unique, that's special. But yeah, it was done. It's like, okay, now what? And and what I learned from that is I like to make a difference. I like to change things for the better.
Mm.
And if you think about it, if Radio Shack has never existed, whose life did that change?
Uh-huh.
Nobody's. You know, yeah, the remote
Yeah.
control cars were fun, but you
Yeah.
didn't need them.
Yeah.
You know, most of the stuff in a Radio Shack is fun, but you don't really need what's in Radio Shack for the most part. So it was very unsatisfying for me. And that's when I was like, I got to get back into real estate because there I'm making a difference. I'm building communities where memories are created. When you think about it, when you're a kid, your most formidable memories hopefully are good ones. For many,
Right.
unfortunately, they're bad, but hopefully they're good ones. And that's sitting around the table having dinner with your family or learning to ride a
Yes.
bike or playing catch with friends or with a sibling. You know, that's what we do.
Yeah.
We create communities to facilitate that. That's powerful for me, and I didn't get excited about the Radio Shacks other than the challenge of building something bigger. And so I think that's really important as people are thinking about what is gonna get you excited. You know, some people really love retail. If that gets you excited and you're passionate about it, go for it. But try to
Uh-huh.
find something you can be excited about and be passionate.
Yes. I mean, yeah. You talk about building communities. I mean, kids running around their neighborhood and their backyards and their front yards. And I mean, that's where the memories are made. And
Yeah.
no matter what your home is, like that was your home. That is the neighborhood you grew up in. And hopefully it was a fantastic, you know, experience. And people don't care. Kids don't care how big your house is, or they just want friends to play with and run around and hop fences. And
I've talked to my siblings. I'm the 7th of 10 kids.
oh, wow.
And
What
we
a
went through a
blessing.
period of extreme poverty. I remember the vacuum broke down and we couldn't afford to fix it, so we swept our carpets.
Oh, wow.
The dryer broke down and it was too cold in the winter, and so my dad got clotheslines that he hung throughout the house, and they zigzagged in the dining room and down the hallways so we could hang dry our clothes because we couldn't afford a dryer and it was too cold outside to dry them. And I've talked to my siblings like, I don't really remember thinking we were poor.
Uh-huh.
I don't yeah, I remember
Yeah.
thinking I wanted to be rich, but I don't remember
Yeah.
thinking we were different and poor, because we created good memories together.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That is what is most important. How
Now,
about,
I don't wanna be poor
yeah.
again. Let's
Yeah.
make that
Right.
straight.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, one of my mentors said, I've been poor and I've been rich. Um, I'd much rather be rich, but that's not what makes you happy. That's not what is fulfilling, but it gives you options. Having means gives you options and choices, which is helpful, but that is not the key to happiness.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, my mom used to teach me because I'd talk all the time as a kid, "I'm gonna be rich and I'm gonna do this and that," and my mom would tell me all the time, she was, "Just remember, son, money is a tool.
Right.
You just decide what you do with that tool."
Yes.
And, so being rich can be pretty great because you can do a lot of great things with that tool.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, you can do so much good or so much bad with whatever gifts you're given, whether it's money or other things. And
Yeah.
also like when kids say or people talk about I want to be rich or I want to be wealthy, it isn't even about the stuff. It's about how the stuff will make you feel. How like having if you're into cars, like a certain car will make you feel or a house or a vacation or it's about the emotion, how it'll make you feel. It isn't even about the things.
Yeah, we have a boat and I love to go water skiing with my family.
Yes.
I've got a Harley Davidson. I love to go for a ride with my
Yeah.
wife, but I could create great memories without those things, but I sure
Right.
enjoy having them.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, it creates exactly what you said, the emotions, the feelings of getting to be with my family and water ski together because we love it.
Yes.
The
Right.
feeling of spending time with my wife on a date, going out for a motorcycle ride.
Yeah. Oh, the best. How
Yeah.
maybe we'll kind of wrap her up here with success. So for you personally, how would you define success for yourself?
I feel pretty fortunate. I feel like I am a success right now. I'm not perfect, but I look at it in all aspects. You could be successful in business, you could be successful as a father, as a husband, whatever it is. But I'm in a pretty fortunate stage in life that I feel like I've got a good marriage that we continue to work on.
Yeah.
I feel like I've got good relationships with my kids that I continue to work on. I feel like I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ and I'm serving other people and helping
Mhm.
them be their best. I've got a business that provides a lot of families and income and support. And so for me, success really is, am I making a difference in all of these aspects of my life? And it ebbs and flows. Sometimes I'm not as good as a husband as I would like to be. And so I refocus on that.
Uh-huh.
But I think that's what's important is having that. variety. I know a lot of people that are success in business and miserable in other aspects, and that's
Right.
not success.
No, no. Well, good. Well, this has been absolutely fabulous. I appreciate you sharing your story and the lessons you've shared. I think our listeners have gotten a ton of value, and I know I personally have. This has been fantastic, and it's awesome to have someone in my own backyard here on the
Yeah.
show, which is super exciting. But yeah, but thank you very much, Dale. This has been fabulous.
Thanks for having me. It was fun to visit today.
Oh, for sure. All right. Well, thanks so much. Well, and we'll hopefully we'll see you in person here soon.
Perfect.
All right. Bye bye.